Hello and good afternoon. Now let us discuss the science and technology and environment portions that came in your GS paper 3 for the year of 2022. All right. So in GS 3, what we've seen this year is that a lot of questions have come with the relevant relation, the relevance from current affairs, right? So if you had prepared your current affairs well, if you knew what was going on in the newspapers, then this part of the paper would be fairly easy, fairly comfortable for you to attempt. Now, despite all of that, some of those questions might feel a little um, uncomfortable. See, because the skill that is now required by the UPSA is moving beyond just knowledge. Initially, it was knowledge of the subject, then it moved on to the analytical part of the subject, being able to analyze and think about that knowledge. And now it is also to be able to relate that knowledge with other parts of your syllabus. Anyhow, we'll get to that when we talk about different questions. The first question in this part is going to be question 5, which reads, the increase in life expectancy in the country has led to newer health challenges in the community. What are these challenges and what steps need to be taken to meet them? Now, the first thing that we do when we look at a question is we try to figure out what its demand is, right? We have to understand what the interpretation of this question has to be. So let's break it down. The increase in life expectancy in the country has led to newer health challenges. So there has been an increase in the life expectancy. So you need to substantiate this fact that okay, indeed there has been an increase in the life expectancy in the country. This metric was important for you to know. It was very well talked about because it is a significant jump that has taken place. What had happened was that in the National Family Health Survey 5, right, what we saw was that the life expectancy for our country is now 70 years, whereas in the period of 1970-75, that period, it was around 50 years. So the jump is around 20 years. All right. Now, irrespective of whether your metric matches, absolutely here, there can be some variance, right? Some of you might have written 70 point something. Some of you just would have written 70. All right. Whatever that metric is, as long as it is substantiated, as long as you're telling me what survey it is from, right? As long as you're giving me a standard source of this information, you'll be fine. All right. Then as a good practice, it is preferable that you give me this information in the introduction itself, right? So we pay attention to the fact that okay, the increase in life expectancy in the country has happened. Now, what did the question ask you? What are the challenges that this creates, and what are the measures that you can take to counter these challenges? Fair enough. So what happens if there is an increase in life expectancy? When there is an increase in life expectancy, you have a larger population of geriatric people, of old age people, of senior citizens, right? So using these terms, senior citizens, geriatric population, or even if you want to write the silvering of the economy, all of this counts as keywords here. All right. So when you're explaining these things, these sort of words would help. Now, what are the challenges that would come up? Again, as per our regular discussions, I try my best to give you as many points as possible, as many different arguments as possible. Your job here is to match, right? Your job is to see if you've written something similar. Please remember that the UPSC exam, please remember that the UPSC exam is a very, very subjective exam in the mains phase. So what that means is that my students will have a lot of variation in what they're writing, right? You might use different words, you might use a different phraseology, you might figure out a different way to present this information. But as long as you're giving me solid arguments, right? As long as you're making sense, as long as all of this is substantiated and there is a logical flow, all of your arguments will be deemed correct by the examiner. All right. So I do not want any of my students who are looking at this discussion now to worry that, ma'am, I've not written all of this, right? Do not do that to yourself right now. Okay. Performing in the exam pressure is a different game altogether. If you're able to remember 5 points, 6 points, more than enough. All right, now what are the challenges? We will have degrading health and geriatric diseases. As we have an older population, the timeline of their life cycle will increase. That means they're more susceptible, more vulnerable to various diseases. And in addition, certain diseases only affect the older citizens, right? For example, this thing, the frictional damage to joints. You do know that your knees and your major joints are only equipped to operate for a certain time period, right? After that time period, your joints tend to start failing. The cushion that is between these joints, that also starts to fail. So that sort of diseases, old age diseases, the burden of such diseases will also increase. What else will happen? You will also have age-related physical and mental disabilities. What are we trying to say here? We're saying that sometimes, even though you do not have a disease, but your body stops functioning optimally. What that means is, for a geriatric population, sometimes what will happen is that their quality of life, the way that their body responds, their ability to do general day-to-day tasks, that also declines. For example, moving up the stairs for an old person might be difficult, right? Being able to bend and pick up things from the floor might be difficult. So that sort of accessibility shift, that also happens. And it is not something, the degeneration is not something that is only limited to your body, right? It is also happening in your mind also. Sometimes you will feel that the geriatric population is a little, for the lack of a better word, slow to pick up on the speed of thought, right? With age's progression, right, the mind might be as fast as possible, but the reaction time at times goes down. All right, plus please remember that when we're talking about, when we are writing about such a topic, you have to have a respectful tone. You have to have a very uh, sincere way of putting these things. If your tonality here is one that of bashing, say to so to say, of the geriatric population, then that goes very against the person who's writing this answer. All right, now the next argument can be, there will be a high cost of care and treatment because of these problems, right? There will be cost that has to be incurred, and it can be care also, it can be treatment also. What is the difference? Treatment means that there is a medical issue and their intervention is required to bring them up to normal, right? But care means it can also include preventive care, right? Before a medical issue has occurred, they might need help. So both of these things are required, and that does not come for free. Some economic cost is going to incur. And what are the implications of this cost? After a person retires, they have a loss of steady income. That much is true. And once that happens, once that steady income is lost, then this cost becomes even more high, right? The cost of anything is based upon how much you can spare, right? Your purchasing capacity, your surplus income, right? And if you have lower income, if you do not have a steady income, then naturally your purchasing capacity falls down, and therefore the affordability of care will become a little more difficult. Fair enough. Now, what else could you give me as an implication of high cost of care and treatment? You could also tell me that the loss of steady income, retirement, is often followed by pension, right? Some old age people might get a pension and some might not. So that will create a further divide, right? So a sociological implication will be what? That people, a person who has a pension can afford care and treatment, right? And a person who does not have a pension would be facing a lot of difficulty in affording this care and treatment. All right, that sort of thing you would want to write. What else is possible? Some of these geriatric population might have a need for daily assistance, as I said, with care, right? So they might need daily assistance, they might need functional therapy, they might need a skilled professional to give them the joint mobility, give them, you know, informed and educated guidance as to how to maintain their bodies. And all of that means what? That skilled human capital will be required, right? Because these people who would be providing these services, they need to exist, they need to be trained, and the profession itself needs to be established, right? So that is the other challenge that is identified, that, you know, we will have to create these skilled capital. right? Then the special needs of widows and widowers also have to be taken into account. What does that mean? In old age, sometimes a partner may pass away, right? So then what happens to this person, right, who is left behind? They might be a widow or they might be a widower, right? Their needs will again be different. Their needs might be will again be more strong. Why? Because they've spent their life in the company of a person, and when that person is lost, there is also grief that is attached to that, right? So counseling services, mental health services, support groups, that sort of thing is also required here. One thing I would want you to note is that writing an argument, giving me a point which is just a noun, does not give me clear elaboration. So there is virtually no elaboration if you just write widows and widowers. Because as an examiner, I would not know why the existence of widow or widowers is a challenge, uh, and essentially is a health challenge to the community. You have to take the examiner to the end of this thought. Widow and widowers, if you tell me that grief, and that means what? Mental health challenge, right? Then you would give me the complete thought here, right? So please remember that. What else could be an argument here? With the infiltration of medical technology, that is med tech, right? Or what is this? Remote medicine, essentially using information communication technology to provide medical services to the patients, right? That sort of thing can happen. Now, after COVID-19, all of that has become a lot more prominent. But the issue is that this part of the population is more predisposed to have a difficulty in operating in accessing such services, right? So their dependency on traditional medicine is higher. So that is again a challenge of bringing these people under the purview of medtech, or being able to ensure that they get traditional conventional medical services. Fair enough. What else? Then there is also a decline in general quality of life. This could be elaborated in the view of say the lack of social support, right? The lack of community support, right? The lack of all of these components, all of these other challenges that are there. The coexistence of all of these different issues can lead to what? An overall poor quality of life, which is again a challenge for the geriatric population. Fair enough. Beyond this, again, if you've made some arguments, right? Maybe you've made something about euthanasia, living with pain management, right? Chronic disease. That sort of thing is also acceptable. But again, please remember, evaluate your arguments based on their sound logic, right? Now, what else is possible? The second part of the question was, what are the measures we can take to address these challenges? Fair enough. So the second part of your answer is going to be that you're going to tell me what is required here. Essentially, the first thing that is required is a structural change, right? So it is what is required is a structural change, structural reform in the health sector. Why? Because the health sector right now is geared towards a different demographic profile, right? So shifting that to a geriatric care system will have to require structural change, isn't it? And that structural change will require huge investment, right? Of course, no change can happen without funding, so a lot of funds have to be diverted. Fair enough. Now, we have to ensure and increase the awareness of the fact that elderly care is not the sole responsibility of only one part of the community. What I mean is that elderly care is not just the family's responsibility, it is not just the community's responsibility, it is not just the society's responsibility, and it is not just the government's responsibility. In fact, it is the responsibility of all of these elements together, right? So all of these things have to come together, create a web, and support the geriatric population. Only then will it be a successful care experiment. What else can be done? We also need a reform of the pension policy and improve social security schemes, so that this inequity, because of the lack of what? Regular income, so that that inequity is addressed. All right. Then we also need to improve the care economy. That is a direct correlation to this requirement of skilled human capital. So if we require this capital, this means that the care sector, caregiving sector, nursing, this thing, nursing and physiotherapy, that sort of thing, right? Pain management, that sort of part of the health sector, that needs to be augmented. What else? We can also improve the scheme implementation. Here, whatever schemes you remember for the geriatric population, for the old age population, that sort of thing you should mention in this answer. All right. So if you remember the PM Jan Arogya Yojana or the Vayashri Yojana, Varish Jan Yojana, all of these things, you can mention them, and then that will act as what? Value addition. All right. So that was the first question. And how do you conclude? You tell us that, okay, the geriatric population is not to be seen as a burden. They do have wonderful capabilities to productively aid the society. Also, what are the sort of things that can be done? They have great leadership qualities, right? They can aid in the ethical and moral growth of the society, development of the society, that sort of thing. All right. Now, what is the next question? This next question is something that students are a little worried about. It reads, each year a large amount of plant material, cellulose, is deposited on the surface of the planet Earth. What are the natural processes that this cellulose undergoes before yielding carbon dioxide, water, and other end products? Okay. So this is a sort of a tricky bouncer question. This is not something that a lot of people expected, but let us see whether or not you would be able to expend some thought, spend some time in this question and still try to answer it. So what is the first thing you need to know? The first thing you need to know, what is this cellulose? Cellulose is a type of plant fiber. Okay. Now see, the idea is that the entire UPSC mains examination, it is a system of creating a level playing field. What that means is, whatever your specialization might be, whatever your strong suit might be, whatever the subject that you're good at might be, right? There will always be one question for you to display your flair. So anybody who has a zoology optional, anybody who's from a chemistry background, biology background, science background, they would be very comfortable with this question, and the difference in the way that they're answering this question will be very clear. Why? See, right from the introduction itself, somebody who's from a science background is going to tell me what is cellulose. It is a sugar, carbohydrate, or polysaccharide made by plants, right? So sugar, so they can tell me for sure, because O's means sugar, glucose, fructose, sugar, right? You can also call it a carbohydrate, because sugars and carbohydrates are sort of interchangeable, because carbohydrate will be what? Sugar is a type of carbohydrate. Sure. Then if they know even more technically, they'll call it a polysaccharide. Polysaccharide means, saccharide means sugar, and poly means multiple subunits of sugars joined together in a chain, right? So in a polymer, so a polymer of sugars is called a polysaccharide, and cellulose is a type of that. So that's why it creates a fiber. Now all of this could be there, or a simple student can also tell me that it is a plant fiber that is there. Both of these definitions are equally acceptable to me. All right, we do not discriminate about people having different amounts of knowledge. It's just that they need to know what the cellulose is. Now, going directly to the demand of the question, right? You could give me one transition statement of the source of cellulose, right? That, okay, most of the earth's surface covered by plants die, right? They act as the food, the primary producers, they do photosynthesis, they create polysaccharides, they create glucose, they create cellulose, and that cellulose is deposited on the planet. Now, what are the natural processes through which the cellulose is broken down? So the process of breaking down of one type of biomolecule is called what? It's usually called digestion, especially when it's happening in a biosystem, right? So you can call it digestion, or you can call it breakdown. Fair enough. Now, what are the main processes? Two main processes most of us would be aware of. That Some herbivores will eat this cellulose and digest it, and some other animals like us, like human beings, what happens is we can ingest the cellulose but we do not digest it, and as fiber it is eliminated from our body as feces. Fair enough. So let's start with the herbivores. What happens is animals like ruminants have special sacs in their bodies, sometimes which is called that they have double stomachs. If this is their esophagus and this is the stomach, right, then there is a second stomach where this food is sort of ruminated. The process is called ruminated. What happens is essentially that the animal will ingest the cellulose and it goes into their stomach, right? After a time they have to belch it out, right, and it goes into their second stomach, right? So primary digestion happens here, but then secondary digestion has to happen here, right? And there are different microorganisms, there are different enzymes that are generated in the second stomach, so that it helps to break down these polysaccharides, break down these fibers of cellulose. All right, so what is the example of ruminants? Cows, right? When you look at the cows who are mulching, you see that, right? Their mouth keeps on chewing the food that they had eaten earlier. So they chew on grass, they ingest it, then they belch it out, they chew it again, and then it goes into their second stomach. So that's how the cellulose is digested in ruminants. You could also make a simple equation here. What sort of equation? You could tell me that cellulose gets broken down into sugar molecules. Polysaccharides, that chain is broken down into single units. That single units is what? Glucose. And that glucose, which is a carbohydrate, can then be broken down into ethanol or carbon dioxide or water. So essentially what we're saying is carbohydrate means you have carbon, right? Carbohydrate. So a carbon that is hydrated, which has water, right? So when it is digested, carbon becomes carbon dioxide and water is released as vapor or droplets. All right. So that's how certain select animals will digest cellulose. What else? As undigested excreta, right, that is eliminated from the bodies of other animals, they will be acted upon by microorganisms, right? Right. And there can be aerobic respiration, you can have anaerobic respiration, and you can have fermentation, depending upon what organism is acting upon it, right? So you can have fermentation, aerobic respiration. What does that mean? It means respiration, burning in the presence of air, right? And you can have anaerobic respiration. All right, microorganisms can act in different mechanisms. Anaerobic respiration will yield ethanol, aerobic respiration will yield what? Carbon dioxide and water, right? Or essentially some other type of this thing, carbohydrate, hydrocarbon also, right? And then fermentation again, anaerobic, and produces what? Ethanol. That ethanol will later become carbon dioxide. Now what else are the alternate processes? Now here is where your creative thinking comes into play. It is not just the cellulose which is eaten up by the animals, it can also be dead plants, right? What will happen to them? The decaying mechanism, dead and decayed plants, that means detritivore food chain, you write about that, right? Then after that detritivore food chain, what happens? That plant material is added to the soil as humus. Another keyword is there for you, humification. Then what else is possible? From your GK, fossilification is also possible, right? Ancient plant matter, when submerged and compressed under layers of rock, became what? Became fossil fuel, right? What type of fossil fuel? Plant remains become coal, right? So that sort of fossil fuel is created, and then that will be stored inside of the earth, and years later now we are extracting and burning that fossil fuel, and that's how that part of cellulose will change into carbon dioxide, right? What else is possible? One more way is possible, if you could have thought of it, that this cellulose can also be directly burnt. You can have forest fires, and you can also have other animals burning that type of plant material also. And then that burning is what? Again, the transformation is change into what? Carbon dioxide and carbon, right? Which is essentially ash. So what is the learning here? Even if you do not know the answer to this particular question, what you had to do is a little bit of creative thinking, a little bit of trying to bring this information into the regular life. What really happens to the plant material on the planet? What are the things that we can hope for, right? What are the things that we see around us, right? Fossilification, we know that we are burning wood also. It is just that leap that we had to make. All right. But again, don't be too harsh on yourself. The idea is, if this hit you, then you would be able to write a strong answer. All right. Then in the end, what conclusion could you give me? You could give me a conclusion about the need for handling all of these things, the need to understand the processes of the carbon cycle, right? The emphasis that is there now because of climate change, that sort of thing you could have told me. Again, the opportunity for value addition is always there. If you want to quote an SDG goal, right, then again, it is an opportune moment. Now, the next question is, discuss in detail the photochemical smog, emphasizing its formation, effects, and mitigation. Explain the 1999 Gothenburg Protocol. So the question is very clear. It's not worded in a complicated manner. Straightforward. What are you required to do? You're going to tell me the formation of photochemical smog, the effects, how to mitigate it. And then you have to tell me something about the Gothenburg Protocol. Now, photochemical smog, though most of my students study, you have to define what it is, right, in the introduction. Then the formation. It is a complex reaction, chain reaction that uses light. That's why it's called a photochemical smog, right? What are the reactants and what are the products? The reactants are primary pollutants, volatile organic compounds, and in the presence of sunlight, it gets converted into smog. In pure science questions, in pure chemistry questions, just writing the equation like this is also rewarded, right? Because you're giving me a standard way of talking about this process. Then what are primary pollutants? NOx. Volatile organic compounds are VOX. And then what is smog? Smoke plus fog. So you're giving me description also. Now, what are the sources? The sources of NOx and VOX are what? Burning organic matter, crop residue, coal for power plants. You can talk about vehicular emissions, that sort of thing. But look at the way that we're using up this space. We told the examiner that primary pollutants are NOx. Volatile organic compounds are called VOX. And then I am free to use the nomenclature in short form. All right. So please remember, always quote the full name first, and then we talk about the shorthand. Then, what are the components of photochemical smog? We can have nitric acid, we can have pan-peroxyacyl nitrate, and we have aldehydes. And beyond that, we also have surface ozone. So, 4 components: 1, 2, 3, and 4. These 4 components are available, right? And again, out of this, as much information as you remembered, you should provide to the examiner. Now, what are the effects? Here you have the opportunity to save some time, save some space, and just list the names, because what is being asked, they're asking you to discuss in detail photochemical smog. That discussion in detail means that you have created these subheadings. That itself is detail. In a 10 marker, falling into the trap of droning on and on writing paragraphs will be problematic for us. So what are the effects? The effects are reduced visibility, right? That the photochemical smog on the street, it's detrimental to long distance visibility. What else? It causes respiratory distress to people. It causes eye irritation, right? It disrupts the nitrogen cycle, and it also does what? It provides a source of ozone toxicity. So ozone is toxic to humans. That's why surface ozone is a pollutant. So all of these things you can tell me. If you remember anything else, again, as long as it's correct, perfectly acceptable to us. Now, how do you mitigate this photochemical smog? You have to reduce the reactants, right? You work on reducing this sort of pollution that is creating photochemical smog. What are the ways there? You reduce vehicular emission, you reduce the fossil fuel use, you put in catalytic converters in the emission part of the vehicles. So what happens there? These pollutants, they are um, treated before they are left into the atmosphere. What else can be done? You can have cloud seeding and induce rain to reduce the uh, proportion of these pollutants in the atmosphere. What else can you do? Certain trees also help in reduction of these pollutants in the air. So we can also have bio remediation, right? Bioremediation, what are the trees? The trees I've mentioned are pine tree, juniper, these sort of trees help in bioremediation of these pollutants. Now, coming to the second part of the demand of the question, it says explain the 1999 Gothenburg Protocol. So what happened there? In this protocol, we had emission standards for 4 pollutants: NOx, VOx, ammonia and sulfur. So these 4 pollutants, there was a ceiling limit that was decided that okay, this is the only amount of pollution that we can do. And then because of this, every climatic phenomena, any pollution phenomena that is related to these pollutants, that would get targeted. For example, NOx means what? Acid rain. It will also mean oceanic acidification, right? Sulfur again will also mean the same thing, because what? Sulfur will make sulfuric acid, nitrogen, NOx, nitrates and nitrites will make nitric acid. Again, acidification and acid rain, right? Beyond that, VOXNH3 will do what? They create eutrophication, because they are what? Organic, this thing, nutrients for plants. So that is the risk of eutrophication, and of course photochemical smog also, as we have discussed here, right? And then in the conclusion is what? That pollution has what? Wide ranging consequences. It has health impact, that sort of thing. And again, it is essential in the current day and time that we work towards reducing these pollutants. Fair enough. Next, the eighth question was explain the mechanism and occurrence of cloud burst in the context of Indian subcontinent and discuss 2 recent examples. So very clearly, the value of current affairs is evident here. You're directly asked to give a recent example. Without that example, you will be marked out of 5, right? So the first part of the demand of the question is what is cloudburst, and the second demand worth 5 marks is the 2 examples that you're going to give me. So be very, very careful. You have to give examples. All of this elucidate. It has to be addressed to the best of your ability. Now, how do you begin? You start with defining cloudburst. What is it? Rainfall which is greater than 10 centimeter in an hour, right? In a range of area which is limited to 20-30 square kilometers, right? It is called a cloudburst. The idea is that the cloud has suddenly burst apart and the rain is happening in bucketfuls. It goes beyond the absorption capacity of the landscape, beyond the drainage capacity of the landscape. Now, what is the mechanism? Why and how does a cloudburst occur? So the first requirement is that there should be, the first requirement is that there has to be a rain bearing cloud, right? In order for the cloud to burst, there has to be a cloud which has a lot of water vapor, which has a lot of ability to dispense this rain. And how does that sort of cloud form? Normally it is an orographic formation. What is orographic? Orographic rainfall, you could give me a quick diagram also. The air which ascends a slope, right? It reduce, the temperature gets reduced, right? The air gets what? Concentrated with water vapor, and that's why a large cloud forms. And further, as the air keeps on ascending, this cloud keeps on getting larger and larger and larger, right? Once this cloud gets larger, at the peak, at the top, at the apex of this mountain, the temperature will drop, and what will happen there? Then the rainfall will start, right? So this sudden crack of rainfall, this rainfall will fall here, and again this is a small range of area, right? It is a small area, that's why a lot of rain will occur here. Then what is the name of this cloud? It's called the Cumulo Nimbus cloud, right? It is a what? Fluffy cloud, and it is large, and it has a lot of rain capability. What else happens? Because of the topography of mountains, because the mountains are in ranges, right? So it is possible that the cloud gets stuck in one place, right? The cloud is not able to move, and that's why the rain is only concentrated in one area, right? And then what happens? You have continuous violent rain. Then now you have to give me occurrence and example. The classical example is that of the Himalayan fold mountains in India, right? Recent examples were there in Amarnath, they were there in Chamoli, and other states in other places in Uttarakhand and Himachal. Okay, then what is the new thing that happened was that now we're getting cloudburst in the peninsular region also. So the recent example from there was the Telangana floods that took place in the Godavari region. All right, so that sort of thing. Please give me the examples. You can elaborate, you can articulate, telling me that okay, there was a huge loss of life, dam can get burst, the rivers overflow, right? There was landslide, there is agricultural loss, loss of property, that sort of thing you can elaborate. Okay. Now, the next question was, do you think that India will meet 50% of its energy needs from renewable energy by 2030? This is question 12. Do you think that India will meet half of its energy needs from renewable energy by 2030? It is a target, so I don't think that you would want to refute this fact because we are well on our way. Justify your answer. How will this shift of subsidies from fossil fuels to renewables help achieve the above objective? Explain. What does that mean? So what are the parts that you'll make? First, you'll tell me that, okay, we have a need for renewable energy transition, right? You can tell me what our targets are, right? Then, first part of your argument is going to be that India is meeting its targets, right? And the second part is going to be that there is a shift of subsidies that is helping us achieve our targets, right? So naturally, the stand that we would want to take that we are well on our way to meet half of our energy needs from renewables. All right. Now, for solar, a lot of you would remember a lot of data, but for the rest, I would want you to furnish some examples also. Please be careful. It should not feel like the only way that we are meeting our targets is through solar, right? It is true that you prepare solar well, but of course, as I've said before, preparation of the entire renewable sector is very important for us. So in solar, if you've written any of this, the Kusum scheme, PLI schemes, solar parks, the International Solar Alliance, all that thing, of course, we are well on our way. If you know the installed capacity, then that is a strong value addition. For those of the students who are going to prepare for next year and are watching this discussion for the benefit of growing their information, you have to understand that for the renewable sector, right, for different types of renewable energy, I do suggest my students to please memorize the installed capacity and the targets that are there, because it is a very strong target that we have in the current time frame. Now, you can also talk about the other type of renewable energy. You can talk about the hydropower energy potential that we have. What are the different type of dams that we are making? You can talk about the hydropower projects there, right? Large hydropower projects, small hydropower projects, that sort of thing. Wind energy, the offshore and onshore wind capacity that we have now, the targets that we've set for ourselves, that sort of thing you could tell me. You can also talk about other non-conventional sources of energy that are not that much into focus. You can tell me about biogas, right? All these anaerobic digesters that are there in the agricultural world. You can talk about the government's push for ethanol blended fuel, right? Because again, that is an ability for us to generate bio this thing fuel, that sort of thing. And of course, nuclear, you can talk about that also. You can mention nuclear deals, you can mention the upcoming plants that we have. All right. Now, what is this idea of the shift of subsidies? So this question essentially becomes that of a mix between science and technology and economy. All right. So what happened is the shift of subsidies. There is a shift of fiscal space from fossil fuels to renewables. It's basically reiterating the fact that earlier the government's money was going into providing subsidies for fossil fuels. And now that shift has happened, the change is there. And now that money is being spent into pushing renewable sources. How solar products are subsidized, right? There are purchase obligations for renewable energy, right? There is investment in skill development, innovation, indigenous manufacturing, performance led incentive schemes, that sort of thing, right? And what else? The cost drowning of fossil fuel products is the eventual reality that is happening. As the renewable energy becomes cheaper, as its affordability increases, that means that the fossil fuel will become equally what? Unattractive to us, right? And that's how we are pushing for a shift towards renewables. All right. In the conclusion, again, you can tell me how fossil fuels are detrimental to the environment. We need to have strong action against climate change, and how renewables are the future. Again, you can talk about the targets that India has given on the international landscape. Fair enough? Fairly straightforward, this question. Now, question 15. Launched on the 25th of December 2021, the James Webb Space Telescope has been much in news since then. What are its unique features which make it superior to its predecessor space telescopes, and what are the goals of this mission? What potential benefits does it hold for human race? So the demand of the question is quite clear. You are required to tell me the features, you are required to tell me the goals of the mission, you are required to tell me the potential benefits. And this type of question is something that we do expect, right? Remember a few years ago when the Juno mission was launched, there was a direct question about that also. So whenever there is a significant and monumental launch of device that happens, then of course that sort of thing is often asked by the UPSC. So the James Webb Space Telescope is of course a very big step in improvement from our imaging of distant galaxies of the universe. So that's why it's been asked. In the introduction, you tell me something about the James Webb Space Telescope. Essentially, it's fine even if you just reiterate the information from the thesis statement. So what are the unique features? Here, this is the factual part. You have to know that, okay, what? It is a mirror-based telescope, right? It has infrared, this thing, visual capacity. It works on the infrared part of the spectrum, right? The mirror is 6.5 meter in aperture. What else? It is a successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, and it is a lot more sensitive than its predecessor, right? The Hubble Space Telescope operated at room temperature at nominal temperature, but this one operates at sub-zero temperature to the level of minus 230 degrees. Again, this is the sort of information, if you know, you know. You will not have this information at your tips by divine intervention in the examination. So you prepare accordingly. All right. There are some interesting things about this telescope also. Any layman, any person on the planet can submit a request for the observation of the part of the universe, and that will be taken into account. So it has what? A democratization sort of vibe, that democratization sort of energy about going through space exploration. What else? All of the data that will be gathered will be publicly available to scientists, to students, to teachers, everybody. What else? It has the ability to see through dust clouds, and that has to do with IR. Because it is an IR infrared telescope, it has the ability to see through dust clouds also, because it is not only depending upon visible light. What else? It does mass spectroscopy. The idea is when you're picking up different types of wavelengths, right, you can run a spectroscopic analysis. What does that mean? Every element, every material in the universe emits a certain type of light. When you analyze that light, essentially is what spectroscopy is. The spectrum of the wavelengths is analyzed to determine the nature of the material. Now, what are the goals of the mission? It is designed to study the earliest stars. It looks into the history of the universe. What else? It helps us to study every phase in the history of the universe, from the earliest to the new. What else? It can analyze exoplanets. What are exoplanets? Exoplanets are planets that are far away from our solar system, outside of our realm of the universe. What else? It is forging international cooperation right from the beginning, from its design, right from its creation to its launch to now its operation, and then all of this data sharing and resource sharing capabilities. What else? It will also produce spectroscopic data, and this spectroscopic data will enable what? The chemical analysis, physical data, that sort of thing, right? What can be the potential benefits? The first potential benefit, the most simplest thing is what? It enables us to study complex astrophysical phenomena, right? It helps you see things in the universe. So that will help you solve the mysteries of the universe, solve the questions of astrophysics. What else? It will help us look for habitable planets, exoplanets, right? We can study life on other planets and whether or not it exists, right? It has recently captured the image of an Einstein ring. What is an Einstein ring? Again, a specific astrophysical phenomena through gravitational lensing, right? You can see a ring and it's called the Einstein ring, right? A ring of light, essentially. Then what else? It can help us explore the origin of life. Now, this sort of thing is again a quite a general output, but if you remember the factoid about gravitational lensing, that is a value addition here. All right, and in conclusion is what? That the pursuit of science and development is important. Scientific temperament is a directive principle in the Indian this thing constitution, and it is science that helps us understand the world. That sort of thing you can give me in the conclusion. Now, the next question is something that in the past year most of us would have wanted to know, right? Just by having the experience of the pandemic, it is sort of imperative that we now understand the process of vaccination and the mechanism behind it. Now, question 16 reads, what is the basic principle behind vaccine development? How do vaccines work? What approaches were adopted by the Indian vaccine manufacturers to produce COVID-19 vaccines? Right answer in 250 words. So what are the things that they're asking you? They've asked you the basic principle, first paragraph, right? The second thing is how do they work? Second paragraph, right? And what are the approaches adopted by manufacturers? The third paragraph. So clear distinction about the demand of the question. So I would want vertical segmentation. What is vertical segmentation? That when you're writing the answer, I want to see very clearly where your answers are, right? The introduction is here. You're telling me basic principle here, right? Then you're telling me the working here. Then maybe you're telling me the approaches here. One approach, two approach, three approach, and you conclude here, right? That sort of thing can aid the amount of marks that you're getting, because the examiner can see very clearly, okay, introduction, conclusion done, first part, second part, third part of the question answered, right? So this is something that is called vertical segmentation. Okay, now what are the basic principles? What is the basic principles of vaccination? How do you introduce? You begin with the definition of vaccine. Fair enough. First paragraph, basic principle of vaccination. What is it? It is the weakened pathogen. When the weakened pathogen is introduced in the body, right? When the weakened pathogen is introduced in the body of the recipient in a way that it does not create disease, but instead it triggers an immune response. That process is called vaccination. That is the principle of vaccination. What is the principle? That a weakened pathogen is the organism that is causing the disease. It can be the bacteria, it can be the virus. It is weakened, right? And that weakened pathogen is introduced in a person's body. Because it is weakened, it does not create disease, but what it does create is the immunity response. And that this immunity response protects this recipient later when this actual unweakened strong version of the virus comes and attacks this person. Why? Because this person already has the antibodies, already has the acquired immunity against this particular pathogen. Okay, so that is the basic principle. What is the working of the vaccine? The working is essentially that step 1 is the process of vaccination, administering this vaccine into the body. What does that do? That will stimulate an immune response through what? Your T cell, B cell immunity, acquired immunity, immune characteristics. Then this acquired immunity, right? You have acquired immunity to the disease. Now, if that immunity, if that pathogen comes and attacks your body, then your body has pre-existing this thing, immunity. So that pathogen can come and infect you, but your immune response reduces the virulence or pathology or the strength of disease, right? So that the pain of the disease is sort of reduced, the adverse effect of the disease is reduced, right? What are the approaches to vaccine development, right? The first approach was virus approach. What do? You take a gene from a pathogen, from the pathogen of the virus, right, of the disease, and put it in a different virus which can not reproduce but still triggers an response in the body. So what are we saying? We have a different virus, right, and in this virus only a part of the actual disease causing pathogen, a part of this is added to this virus, right? And when this virus goes into the person's body, this person gets immunity against this entire virus, a part of which mimics the pathogen, and therefore you have immunity against the actual pathogen also, right? So what is the example here? Covishield was made according to this, and that was made out of the adenovirus that is found in chimpanzees, right? So that pathogen is not found in humans. It is not something that will affect humans, but it does give you immunity against a part of the COVID-19 virus, right? What is the other way? The other way was inactivated virus. Inactivated virus means that a chemically inactivated virus, this virus is put in a chemical, right, that deactivates this virus. It is dead, it is killed, right? Then this deactivated virus is put into the recipient's body. This recipient's body recognizes this as an external agent and creates what? Creates an immune response, right? But naturally, because this is an inactivated virus, it does not cause disease in the recipient. The vaccine that was made in this regard was Covaxin, right? Beyond this, you also have the idea of mRNA vaccine. What happens in mRNA vaccine? So mRNA means messenger RNA. The messenger RNA goes to the nucleus and does what? It creates a response for protein synthesis, right? So basically what happened was that in an mRNA virus for the COVID-19 vaccination process, what they did was they created the mRNA for the spike protein. The spike protein was that the virus has these spikes on it, right? So just for this particular spike protein, the design of this protein, the mRNA was created, right? And that created an immune response in our bodies against this specific part of the virus only, right? So as soon as the virus enters our body, the body attacks this part of the COVID-19 virus, and that's why it helps to reduce the impact of the disease. Example here was Gemcovac, right? Uh, After all of this, you can also give me an overview of the general approach through which these vaccines were developed, right? They were developed because of the collaborative work of thousands of scientists across the world, right? Scientists and medical professionals across the world to do the genome sequencing of the virus, right? Another way of the approach to vaccine development as a process itself, as a system, as a macro system, is what? Augmenting the existing infrastructure of production of biomolecules. All right. So you talk about international cooperation, you talk about genome sequencing, you can talk about resource allocation, because that is how it was done in the crisis situation. Then again, what is the conclusion going to be? Conclusion is going to be that okay, the COVID-19 was what? Once in a lifetime crisis. It was a test of the abilities of mankind to face a giant challenge, right? But it's good that we've come out alive at the other end. Okay, it works as a lesson for future pandemics. That sort of thing you can tell me in the conclusion. Now we have question 17. Okay, this question is not written correctly here. Question 17 actually reads, discuss global warming. Yeah, discuss global warming and mention its effects on the global climate. Right. So what do you have to tell me? You're going to tell me what global warming is, and it says discuss global warming, right? So what are its causes and what are its effects? Explain the control measures to bring down the level of greenhouse gases which cause global warming in the light of Kyoto Protocol 1997. So that is the third part of the body, right? So you introduce, okay, what is global warming? What are the causes? Of course, this sort of thing will be easy for you to write because it is an easy topic. It is a well studied topic everywhere. So What are the causes of global warming? You have post-industrial fossil fuel use, mass production, consumption, rise in living standards, high energy consumption. That sort of thing has contributed to a lot of generation of what? Emissions. Then the idea is that the greenhouse effect takes place, and then there was deforestation and destruction of the carbon sink, and there was pollution, population explosion, and there was shift in land use patterns, right? Agricultural patterns, the deforestation, everything happens. So eventually, overall, the result was global warming. What are the effects? The effects are global temperature rise, climate change, disruption of weather patterns, melting of ice caps and glaciers, mass extinction events, high frequency of extreme weather incidents, right? You can also have sea level rise in the incidence of what? Of infectious diseases, right? Change in a vector pattern, that sort of thing can happen. And as many effects that you could think of, please mention. Now about measures in the Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol was essentially established for stabilizing the amounts of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, right? It created the clean development mechanism. It enabled countries to know that, okay, our development has to progress in a way in which the environment is rendered still clean, right? It also created the framework for emission, this thing, trading, right? Trading of emission units. So that sort of thing is going to help. And again, you conclude with global warming being an international challenge. You can talk about how sustainable development goals are being established around this. There is global cooperation for managing climate change. All right. Now, the last question in this series is question 18. Explain the causes and effects of coastal erosion in India. So, what are the causes? What are the effects of coastal erosion in India? And what are the available coastal management techniques for combating this hazard? Right? How do you manage this problem of coastal erosion? So, what is the introduction? The introduction is again simply define what coastal erosion is. You have a coast, because of various reasons, the sand over there can get eroded, and the shape, the size, and the length of the coast can get altered. What are the causes? You can have natural causes, you can have anthropogenic causes, right? It says explain. So please, it means that you give me one sentence of elaboration here, right? Always pay attention to the tag of the question, the exact demand, the directive of the question. So what are the natural this thing causes? Because of the wave action, right? Wave erosion, it can happen because of cyclones, surges, tsunamis, that sort of weather event on the coast. It can happen because of heavy rain on the coast, right? Coastal rainfall can occur because of, maybe if you have orographic rainfall or something at the coast, so that can create a lot of erosion of the sand beach. What else? You can also have cross current. What is a cross current? That, okay, if this is the coast and the current is flowing like this, then this coast gets eroded and gets deposited elsewhere, so the overall shape of the coast will shift, right? So that is how the cross current erodes the coast. And then beyond that, we have anthropogenic causes. Like what? You can have extreme urbanization along the coast. You can have port development, because of which the coastline itself is changed. Then you can have sand mining on the beach. If the sand is taken and is mined and taken away elsewhere for some other application, again, that is a problem and creates what? Coastal erosion. We can have damming. How damming? What happens is that if you have a river and you have a dam that is created across it, the load of the river will be stopped here, right? The sediment and everything will be stopped here where the dam is. So what happens after that? The water that is flowing, this has higher erosion capacity, because now its load is zero, so it can erode more sand, right? And when this sort of water enters the coastline, even at the delta region, then it has less deposition and it has more erosion capacity. So that's why damming is also a way of eroding the coast. What else? Corals, mining corals for bio, this thing, resources, that sort of thing also breaks down the coast. What are the effects? The effects are the depletion of fish stock. If there is no sand, right, the fish, the natural habitat, the ecological balance is damaged, and therefore the amount of fish that is there, that can get affected. Beyond that, there will be a loss of biodiversity because of the messing up the imbalance in the entire ecological change. What else? There will be loss of ecological services because this coastline is lost, right? There will also be loss of land area, right? The territory of the country will also be lost because naturally the land area is getting eroded. All right. Now, how do you manage this coastal erosion? coastal erosion can be managed by what? You can have structural solutions. For example, those of you who've seen the Marine Drive, you see that there are large tetrapods there, right? So it resists wave action from eroding the coast, right? So you can have sandbags, tetrapods, you can have sea walls, that sort of thing. Actual structural engineering solutions. What else? You can also promote coastal vegetation, right? Roots of the vegetation will have soil holding capacity, sand holding capacity, and that's why the coastline will be protected, especially against cyclones and surges and wave erosion, right? We also need to replenish the beaches. What does that mean? If you're doing sand mining on the beach, then that sand also needs to be replenished from a different source. You can't just take away and just leave that area barren. What else? The design of port development, right? The way that the ports are created, that sort of thing can also be designed to minimize coastal erosion, right? And then in the end, what do you write? You write the conclusion that coastal erosion is a big problem, it is an issue, right, because of these multifarious impacts, right? And we should do as much as possible to mitigate the issue. All right, so this is how you could have answered the GS3 ecology and science and tech portion. For those of us who will be writing this paper in the next year, those of us who are looking at this discussion class to gauge how to prepare in the future, the way to prepare in the future is that you look at these issues, you look at these topics, you keep an eye out for what is happening in the current affairs, and you analyze these issues, you collect these information, right? You broaden your understanding to the best of your ability. And as always, practice, practice, practice. All right, practice answer writing to the most that you could do. All right, and for the students who did write this exam, please, I hope this was helpful. I hope you were able to check the arguments that you've written. Of course, the world is large, the arguments are many, the interpretations are many. Of course, your arguments could differ from the ones that we have thought of. But as long as it answers the demand of the question, as long as it is relevant, you should not worry about not getting marks. Of course, you'll get marks if you've written something relevant. All right, so that's all from me today. Thank you.
So greetings to all of you, and I welcome you to the GS Paper 3 discussions. My name is Ishan Arora, and I will be taking the discussions for internal security. So the first question which we had this year for UPSC Mains 2022 in terms of internal security is discuss the types of organized crimes and describe the linkages between terrorists and organized crime that exist at the national and transnational level. So, a basic instruction to all of you is that whenever you read the question, always follow the directives properly and underline the keywords. And also, specifically, you can divide your answer into parts so that all of them are catered. Discuss the types of organized crimes. This is the first part of your question. Then you have to describe the linkages between the terrorists and organized crime that exist, and this in itself is also divided into two parts. So the flow of the answer, before giving you the actual answer, we'll have a road map. So initially we will have the definition of organized crimes. Then as per the demand of the question, we will move into the types. Now, after giving the types, you will see that the language of the question or the demand of the question is changing. It is asking you something more. It is saying that you have to describe the linkage between terrorists and organized crimes at the national and transnational level. So, once this part is completed, we will be having a link statement which takes you to the next part of the question or the answer. This link statement will be followed by the actual linkages. And these linkages should be told at two levels, national and transnational. Once this is given, we will write the conclusion. So this is how your answer is going to flow. The proper flow of the answer should be this. So the first thing which you will be discussing here is what is organized crime. So we will be defining it. Now, what is an organization? An organization is a group of individuals which has a specific aim, and once it is a multinational organization or corporate MNC, then it is going to do businesses to gain profits. Now, crime is also unplanned, unorganized, or organized. Two types of crimes are there. Criminal activity can be based on two procedures. One is that you are totally planned that we are going to do this. Second is unplanned. Criminal act can be planned or unplanned. Another part can also be spontaneous, but that is also unplanned. So when the criminal activity is very much planned, okay, we are convinced 100% that we are going to perform a criminal activity or an illegal act, perform illegal actions for the sake of profit in a organized setup. Basically, we are going to form a company. Basically, the structures will be like a company. There will be a boss, There will be people who are executing things, there will be people who are planning things, people who are arranging stuff, and basically all the administrative setup, all the, you might name them differently, but the internal activities of that body will be exactly the same. So this is known as an organized crime, where there is a centralized authority. They will plan out and execute illegal acts, and they are doing it specifically for the motivation of profit. Now the difference from a company is only that a company is doing legal businesses. Organized crime, they will be involved, their profession will be drug trafficking, human trafficking, etc. You might call them rackets, smuggling, syndicates, mafia. All of these words are used for such uh, activities or groups. So these are organized criminal activities. These are organized crimes. This is the definition. And they will be having specialists for each and every work. There will be highly specialized people who have experted the skill of doing illegal activities. So they are very well organized, and the crimes and their quantum will be very large. So this is the first part of the question and the first part of your answer. Basically, discuss the types of organized crime. We have only defined organized crime till now. From here onwards, you will be moving to types. Now in the types, I will be giving it to you in a flowchart basis. First is trafficking. Now trafficking basically means sale or purchase. Now trafficking illegal, sale or purchase of human trafficking or drugs. Okay. Now what happens in trafficking is you are selling human beings like they are goods. You are making them means rather than ends in themselves. So it is some then the people who are trafficked, they might be taken in as in prostitution or slavery, etc. All the inhuman things which you can think of or not even think of. So these are the activities which are done with the help of organized crimes. Second activity or the second type is smuggling. In smuggling, what are the types of goods they can take up? One is weapons. They can arrange weapons for people, arms, ammunition, explosives. In terms of smuggling, they can also bring you drugs, which has already been mentioned, or illicit goods. Another thing can be banned flora and fauna, basically wildlife, those species which are about to be extinct, those flowers which are extremely rare, the trade of which is banned, which are close to extinction. For example, red sanders, you might have heard. Then all of these things, this is the second main activity, types of organized crime. Another thing which you must have seen is armed robbery. Armed robbery is basically you have planned a big heist, and another two aspects where this is done is fake currency. Another area is money laundering. These are a few types of organized crimes. Kidnapping, prostitution rackets, all of these can also be included, but these are the major. So basically prostitution will also undergo human trafficking itself. In smuggling, there can be various other things which are smuggled, gold or etc., anything. But the whole issue is that they are very much organized. Okay, they'll be also doing money laundering. Now money laundering is that you must have earned money through wrong means, but you try to change the source of that money and try to show that it is legal money. So conversion of black money or illegal money into white by showing it through multiple transactions. This is the meaning of money laundering. So these are the types of organized crimes. Now you have got to know what these activities are. And the question is already assuming you know terrorism. So also it is a small question, 150 words. There is no need to define what is terror or terrorism. We will straight away go to the how they are linked. So you can write a linking paragraph, how it is linked. So initially we defined what is organized crime. Then I told you what are the types of organized crimes. Then it is saying, describe the link. So we have to write a statement that we have understood the question properly and we will be giving the answer as per the demand. After defining organized crime and giving the types, we will say in several cases it has been found that these units have linkages with terror organizations. Okay, so so this is basically a proper line to link the answer or take your answer to the next part. Okay. It is often seen that such organizations develop linkages with terror organizations or terrorists. And what kind of relationship do they have? Of mutualism or symbiotic relation. You must have studied in ecology. Symbiotic means they both give and take and both prosper together. Linkages with the terrorists, which are symbiotic in nature. Now, why do these linkages come up? So the reason will also have to be told here, otherwise it will be incomplete. The statement in itself will be incomplete. To give a sense of completion, here we will write these linkages are developed due to, so there are two reasons for this. One is ineffective governance. Second is weak law and order, or you can alternatively say it as lack of implementation of rule of law or poor implementation of rule of law. Second reason is poor implementation of rule of law. So initially we described what is organized crimes and also then we gave the types. Now we have come to this statement that it is often seen that such organizations have developed linkages with terrorist organizations which are symbiotic in nature. These linkages are developed due to ineffective governance and poor implementation of rule of law. So this is the linking line which will take you to the next part. Describe the linkages. Now because we have put in a proper background as to how the linkages occur and we have already seen these linkages happening, we can move to the next part where we can describe these. So what will be the next line to write a proper answer? Such linkages are. Now we will not confine ourselves to this structure because linkages between terrorist and organized crime that exist at national and transnational level. So first we will write the national level. Now, how do you think that terrorists and drug dealers, human traffickers, those who supply weapons, how must they be linking each other within the country? For example, within India, what are the kind of systems, symbiotic relationship which they can have? At the national level, they do two things for each other. First is they act as a source of funds, yeah, finance. Now, even if you want to carry out a terror attack, you will be requiring people and also you'll be requiring funding. Now, second thing which they will be doing is source of fund finance. Second is the logistic support. As I've told you in the previous section of the answer itself, they are taking people from one place to the other and selling them. They are taking weapons from one place to the other and selling them. They are basically buying something from one place and selling it at another. All of these are illegal items. Most of them are, they may also sell people. So without documents, without anything, they are carrying out these activities. So with this, they become instruments for terrorist organizations also. Now terrorist organizations know that these people are capable of carrying such activities. They use these organized crime syndicates to, firstly they have lot of funds or finance, so they can also ask them for funds ki please finance our activities. Another thing can be that they can also supply them with goods. For example, if I am a terrorist organization, I am the head of a terrorist organization and I capture this particular area or the area which is under my control. So all the resources which I cannot sell to the countries directly, I will be selling them through organized crime syndicates. So I will become a supplier and a buyer at the same time. Now if I want logistical support, I want weapons, no country is going to sell me directly. It is going to be happening through the help of organized crime syndicates. If I want people from other countries, if I need any help, that I need a specialist in explosives or something, I'll be calling the organized crime units and telling them ki I want somebody from this particular area. Then another thing can be that if there is a person in my group who is under the radar of the police, so I can smuggle him or basically make him leave the country in a safe manner with these people. So they actually provide a lot of logistic support and finances to the terror organizations. Now coming to the next part, this is at the national level. What happens at the international level? They do two things for such people, organized crimes. First is that they will host terrorists. In the previous part I was saying that if I want to send my person in a safe haven, I am a terrorist organization and I want to send somebody outside, he must have broken a law in India, but that is not a illegal act in Pakistan. He has not broken any law of Pakistan, so I will send him there. Now these organized crimes, they host such people. In return they take a fees or whatever, linkages, businesses. So they host the terrorists. Second thing they help in is they help you expand your networks. In new areas. For example, I am a terror organization in country A. I am looking to expand this in country B as well. So these organized criminals will help me find out those areas where I can set up new offices, or offices as in new regional centers or whatever. Okay, so they will help you in giving the proper information. They will help you in finding out the right resources. They will tell you what is the right time to attack a new area, because they are well aware of the law and order situation in each country. Okay, because when you have to carry out such activities and you have to break the law every day, you know how much the capability of the state is. So they also tip the terrorist organizations, today you can carry out the revolt, these are the issues, the country is weak in this area, particular areas. They tell the loopholes. It's a very beautiful give and take relationship which they are having. In this, what is happening is कि once the terror organization captures a new place, it also becomes a conduit for the organized crime syndicates, and they both are earning in a symbiotic mutualism relationship. So both of them prosper together. So in this answer particularly, you can use this organized criminals will give them with weapon, wealth, or you can say weapon, wealth, explosives, or whatever similar things they will be giving to terror organizations. In return, what will they get from the terror organizations? One is they will get protection. The terror organization also, wherever it is placed, wherever they have their main areas, the smugglers can also go in that area to hide for some time. They can also give them goods, goods or raw material in whatever area they are smuggling. For example, Afghanistan, there is a lot of farming of opium poppy. So they gave it to the people who are in organized crime. So this is a complete circle through which there are interlinkages between organized crimes and terror organization. Now, having explained this issue in completion, you will also have to uh, give a conclusion. We can say that these have become a problem of major proportions, not only for the nations but also internationally. So we need not only strict implementation of rule of law, but also we need to bring in international cooperation. So this is the whole flow of your first answer. So now coming on to the question number 10, it says, what are the maritime security challenges in India? Discuss the organizational, technical and procedural initiatives taken to improve the security. Now, maritime, you all must be understanding that it is talking about the oceans or the seas. For a vast country like India, which is having around 7,000 kilometers of coastline, the oceans not only become a huge opportunity but also a challenge. They are both an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. Now it is saying, what are the main maritime challenges in India? Now these challenges, now in the introduction you will say exactly the same thing which I have told you. The significance of maritime security, basically you can say vast coastline, 7,000 plus kilometer. Okay, it also is an opportunity and also a great challenge. So maritime security, you have given a small introduction, discuss the organization, technical and procedural initiatives. It is saying challenges. Now what are the challenges? So the challenges can be broken down into four major areas. So the first is international peace and security. Or this you can also call as a strategic challenge. Basically what I'm trying to say is ki the first category of challenges which is emerging from the ocean, or the most pressing thing, is the China challenge. Not only in the Indian Ocean but also in the South China Sea. So it becomes a strategic challenge, or you can say it is international peace and security related challenge, or alternatively you can say it is a geopolitical challenge. So this is the first challenge. On a lighter note, not a lighter note, basically on a less technical note, you can say a challenge from China, but this will be more sophisticated and will also appear better. Though we will explain the challenge coming from China in this only, but if we write this international peace and security, the kind of words you use in your headings, they also make a different opinion. They also form an opinion in the mind of evaluator. Security challenges. First is international peace. Second is sovereignty. Also, third, you will have crime. Basically, there are crimes at sea. Now, another major issue which is coming up these days is security of resources, environmental resources, economic resources, and climate change. So, these are the four areas which are presenting the most pressing challenges in the country today. Now, in the main answer, you will first write there is a vast coastline presenting challenges and opportunities both. Then the challenges are international peace, security, and geopolitical. First, we will explain this. In this, the explanation will include, you have the Chinese string of pearls, that is Pakistan and all countries. If taken in the, this is a rough map only. So even in the South China Sea and all this area, the Chinese are building huge infrastructure. They are becoming aggressive. And even in Bangladesh, all of these areas, even in Pakistan, uh, Bab al Mandeb, Strait of Hormuz, Sri Lanka, everywhere the Chinese are expanding themselves. So this will be the first factor. Another thing is that India has always been a net security provider. It has projected itself as a net security provider, a responsible nation, a nation which is there for peace, stability, growth, development, prosperity, harmony. Now, if we have to project our image and our global standing, then also we must appear very strong. The name of the ocean itself, Indian Ocean, is after India. This dominance or our dominance in the field is known throughout the world. So we need to protect it. This is the major geopolitical challenge. In terms of sovereignty, because we have a vast ocean and we are overstretched in our capacity to guard the land borders here with Pakistan and China. So we saw a saddening event in the country, history of the country, in terms of a 26/11 terror attack in Mumbai. And we all know that they came with the help of a boat. So this is another security challenge. It is a challenge to the sovereignty of the country. Now the third area which we are talking about is crimes at sea. Now basically in this area, uh, Strait of Hormuz and Bab el Mandeb, South China Sea, there is a lot of piracy, especially around Somalia. There is a lot of piracy, or these are pirates, samudri lutere in Hindi we call them. There are a lot of piracy is going on in this area. A new factor which has come up is security of your resources and climate change. Now you must have seen that new cities or floods, they have become so much devastating. You saw Bangalore, Assam, Uttarakhand. Now there are countless examples of even the rains bashing up the city infrastructure and all. The sea level is also rising, so this is also, we have to take a comprehensive view of security here. So this is also another issue. So we have discussed what are the security challenges. Now we have to discuss organizational, technical and procedural initiatives to improve. So moving on to the next part. Now we have to first discuss organizational, then technical we'll discuss afterwards, but procedural and technical. So these three things we have to discuss. What is the organizational? What is the organizational structure which we have taken up? The structure includes 5 levels. The first is the Navy, the Indian Navy. Indian Navy, as all of you know, is the basically the armed wing for protecting the sovereignty and sovereignty and international peace, securing the waters. Then we have the Marine Police. Then we have the Coast Guard. Also then we have the Customs. And in the last we also have the local fishermen who are used for intelligence, spying. See, because the ocean is very vast, we need people to give inputs. Navy will take care of the uh, armed responsibilities. Then Marpol is basically the police which is going to take care of the uh, issues which are there in the uh, area of the beach, etc. So there are, this is also known as the custom marine organization. This part, customs one, it will prevent the smuggling. The marine police mostly is for the coastal areas, which helps to impose the rule of law in the coastal areas. Coast Guard is up to 12 nautical miles of the sea. So all of these, their roles are very well organized. In terms of procedure, so this is the organization. When we will give their functions, this will be known as the procedural initiative. So now coming to the technical initiatives which have been taken. So when you will be explaining their functions, organization and the procedure, organization, procedure, that will cover these two aspects, organization and procedural. Now coming to the technical part. In the technical part, there is e-surveillance. So this e-surveillance is being done on 2 levels, not only by the army or navy and the coast guard, etc., with the help of radars, sensors, all of those things, but also with the help of fishermen. We have also done geotagging of the fishermen. We have installed GPS and radars in the local fishermen also. So this is going to help us to better tackle this issue. there is also an automatic identification system installed in the boats, so that we can see which person is it. There is licensing given. All of these issues are there, where technology is used to better safeguard the coast. So now this is only two things. You can also say that there is the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, then Indian Ocean Rim Association. All of these issues have also been taken up, though it is not asked, but you can just mention them, so that you can say that not only these issues have been taken up in the domestic but also international. So in the conclusion part. So with this we can end this, and basically you will in the last say in the conclusion that Indian Ocean Rim Association, Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, these have also come up, and India is actively cooperating with small island nations in the Indian Ocean to regain its spot as the net security provider. So with this we have also covered the question number 10. Now, what are the different elements of cyber security? Keeping in view the challenges in cyber security, examine the extent to which India has successfully developed a comprehensive national cyber security. So again, we will have to understand the flow. In the first part, you will define cyber security. Then the challenges. Then you will give some points about the strategy, NCSS, National Cyber Security Strategy. And finally, you have to see this part very carefully. Examine the extent to which India has successfully developed a comprehensive national cyber security strategy. So first you will say what is cyber security, what are the challenges in maintaining this. So looking at these challenges, the government has brought their strategy. Now the main aspect is whether this strategy is good or not. Basically, what are the weakness of the strategy and how we can overcome it. So that will be the whole flow. So you will give some features of this, and in the final part you will give suggestion. So we'll be discussing this one by one. So cyber security, basically security is providing safety or protection. Now in terms of cyber, basically in the digital or the computers domain, this is basically talking about two things. One is the information or data. Another thing which is there in cyber systems which we need to protect is the network itself. So access to the network, outflow of the sensitive or critical information, all of these things are there in the cyber security. Why it is gaining more and more importance? Because we are going towards a policy where we want to give the services to the people online. This is known as e-governance. Secondly, internet is spreading very fast. Communication, also mobile phones, all the applications are there, your critical information, social media, all of these things is making it more and more difficult. Added on top of it is our habit of using online payment ecosystem. So if all of these things fail suddenly, or your financial frauds are conducted at a national level, then it becomes very difficult to control the situation. So this is the definition of cybersecurity, that we need to protect information, data, and network. Challenges is in the context of the rise. Along with this, we will also go into the specifics. The thing which I have told earlier was very general. Now, challenges which we are facing in proper is that there are a lot of countries which are coming up with their cyber units. For example, China, Iran, Russia specifically. They have dedicated hackers or battalions of cyber attackers in the army itself. China has brought that up unit. So USA is also USA already had it, but Russia, Iran is a new entrant into this field. So China, Iran, these are also, so we are also going into the age of cyber terrorism. Then challenges are that there is a huge widespread of these activities, internet activities, all of these things which I have told you. Another challenge is lack of capability of the state. The biggest factor in all of these things is why India is more and more vulnerable is that we do not have this mindset of security. When we have to buy a antivirus subscription or anything, we prefer the local version which is available for pirated versions. So the mindset of safety is not there. We do not want to spend that extra amount to secure our systems. This is also another, the normal people will never do such things. Then literacy, digital literacy itself is low, and people often fall for such frauds. So these are some of the reasons why this is becoming an issue. And another pressing issue which is upcoming, once 5G will be there and we will be moving towards much faster towards internet of things, then the situation will become even tougher. The flow of data will increase exponentially. So in that situation, these are the new challenges. So now what is the framework? Now, first challenge is that there is a large scale, basically large scale digitalization of public services. So for this, the strategy says, I'll be writing the challenges, and the first is large scale deployment of public services. Public services. Here the strategy is saying that security of these systems or these public services, whatever is coming in the public domain, security should be there thought of in the early stages. As a part of planning or policy at early stages, not after we have rolled out something then we will think how to secure it. It should be in the early stages itself. Now secondly, we have talked about the capability. So here we are saying we are having less capability, so we will bring in more institutional capacity, increase institutional capacity. To assess, supervise, prevent such issues. So all of these things will come here. Now another thing is that we do not even have this mindset of uh, investing on security or even reporting them. So what we need to do is we have to have a system of timely reporting of vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities in the sense that we will have to actively work to find out faults in our security system. For example, you can call it ethical hacking, that we try to hack our own system and tell the person, see, this is the problem, and resolve it. So timely reporting of vulnerabilities and reporting the mishappenings which are happening, so that we have a proper record. So this will also help you in overcoming the problem. Then it has also asked that we need to have a supply chain security. Supply chain security means as in we are buying our electronic components from China mostly. So we need to have systems that the things which we are buying from there, they should be checked in the origin itself. There needs to be some protocols developed that we can go and check, or we can give some standards. So this is how the things should be. Second thing is we are importing a lot of things. So this is the fourth point. Fifth will be that we need to upscale our own capacity to reduce the imports. Increase manufacturing. Basically, if you will see that most of the software giants will have Indians in them. Either it is Microsoft, Facebook, Google, Indians are coding there, they are building the security systems. So why can we not use that resource to develop our own? Then six is that state funding should be there. State funding in the sense that the government should give money to protect our digital assets also. It should not be that only you launch the systems and you do not take care of the security. All of these things should be kept in mind before making the policy. You should be keeping 10 to 15%, especially to protect the assets, digital assets. So all of these things have to be kept in mind. This should be budgeting by default. So in budgeting by default, what will happen is if 100 rupees are given, 15 will automatically be kept aside for the upkeep of the system. Currently what is happening is we give 100 rupees and we are not left with any more. Then the department comes running, we need money to protect this system. So it should be an inbuilt default that out of 100 rupees which the department has got, 15 should be left aside for its security. Another issue which they have raised is that there is also a need of cyber security services. For example, we have Indian engineering services. In that, there should also be the hiring of cybersecurity experts. So, also we have taken up this issue in the BIMSTEC. We have tried to bring out a international model, also the SCO Shanghai Cooperation. So these are the major things. Now it is asking for some suggestions, whether it is extent to which it is being done well. Two things you can suggest to the examiner in this regard. One is that India is not a signatory to the Budapest Convention. Now this is the single document or treaty through which these issues can be tackled at the international level. India should become a part of it. India has still not signed it, though it was initially for the European Union, then USA, Japan, and later many countries joined in to expand it, but India is still not a signatory. Another thing is, there is a new issue which is coming up, not a new issue, but security by design, a new concept. Now, what happens in security by design? It should not be that you first buy the laptop or mobile phone, then you download additional software, etc., etc., to protect your system. The internal designing of the mobile phones, laptops, electronic appliances should be such that automatically security features are enabled. Not only security in terms of the software, but also the hardware designing should be such that it is more secure. Now, what happens in this is that the design or manufacture becomes more expensive. So this is the reason why companies don't offer this. But it should be there as a policy, national policy. So these are the two things which you can say. So on the whole, you can say overall the policy is very comprehensive and covers a lot of things, but these are certain suggestions which we need to take up. Budapest Convention, you can also add that being a responsible member of the international community, India should become a part of this treaty, and rather than being outside and opposing it, it should become a part which guides the international fora to take up new steps. So this will be language, kind of language you can use, but the points will be these only. Now this is the last question of the paper also, and it is on left wing extremism. Now the 20th question is, Naxalism is a social, economic and developmental issues. Social, economic and developmental issue manifesting as a violent internal security threat. They have stressed on the term violent. Okay. In this context, discuss the emerging issues and suggest a multi-layered strategy. So we have to discuss the issues and a strategy, multi-layered strategy to tackle the menace of Naxalism. Menace of Naxalism. So what is Naxalism will also be discussed. So initially in this, what will be the flow? Initially you will define what is Naxalism. Okay. Social, economic and developmental issue. How is it a social, economic and developmental issue? So internal security threat, violent. So this we will all explain. Then we have to see emerging issues. What are the problems, or you can, in other words, you can say this is asking for the impact. What kind of impact is it having? And lastly, a strategy. So basically you are being asked what is the problem? How does it manifest itself? What is the impact? And then you have to give a suggestion for the problem. So in your mind, it is very important to have a clear breakdown of what you are going to write. So Naxalism Basically, you can say Naxalism can be known as the left-wing extremism, which is specific to India. Basically, it is the Maoist philosophy, people who follow the Maoist or Marxist philosophy, Maoist in particular, but it began from Marx. So, this philosophy in India is known as left wing extremism. Their aim is a violent upsurge, basically, or overthrow of the state. So in doing this, they not only attack the state but also those who sympathize with the state. So innocents are also, lives of innocents are also lost. So now we will tell you how it is coming up as a social, economic and developmental issue. Social, economic and developmental issue. Social, economic and developmental issue can be understood as, now in terms of social, you can say that most of these camps, most of the troops of such organizations are being filled by tribals. Now this will become in a social aspect, because this is a division or a classification of the people in the society, Indian society. So now why is it that they have been specifically misused by the Naxalites? Because when developmental activities were taking place, for example, a dam was made. So there is a statistic that the tribals are around 8% of the population. But when it comes to number of people who have been displaced due to developmental projects, huge developmental projects, they are more than 90% of the people. So basically, if 100 people have been displaced, 90 of them will be tribals. On the whole, out of 100 people in the country, only 8 are tribals. So look at this huge contradiction. They have their own social cultural values where they value the forest, their culture, their traditions a lot. And when such a group is forcefully removed from their area, it becomes very emotive issue and difficult for them. Plus, not only are they removed, they are not also rehabilitated properly. So this is the social issue out of it. Now coming to the economic and developmental issue, due to the lacking in various aspects of health education, they have not also been able to come into the fold of the society in terms of the economic roles which people are playing today. And also the world has also moved in a different spectrum as it was 100 years ago. India has moved much more towards materialism, whereas the tribes have their own indigenous culture where they value nature more. They will worship trees, they will take care of nature, they will have different aspects of happiness other than those who are living in the cities. Now when such activities happen, their cultural beliefs are hurt at times. Religious beliefs also are hurt. So they do not find ways to give expression to their problems. And in this vulnerable time, the Naxals approach them. So they are not having proper education due to the effect of corruption also. They do not get their benefits, the benefits which they are entitled to have. So on the whole, a situation is created that they are economically backward, socially they are not looked at, the mainstream media does not take care of them, they do not highlight their issues, the government does not look at them. So on the whole, the issue was there is no development also in this area. So they became very disenchanted with the government. The government was not seen as an instrument which can bring goodness in the lives of people. So they started revolting against the state and they said, we will violently overthrow the government. We do not believe in democracy now. So they were so hurt, and now what has happened is the Naxalites took control of such areas. Now they do not allow any developmental activities to come up in those areas. So that if development will come, the problem will be solved. To now those groups with vested interests who have taken control over their area, they themselves do not allow the basically the average tribal person who wants to lead a peaceful life, etc. They do not allow them to exit. So this is how the whole situation has emerged, the emerging issues. So the whole situation you can understand through this. So a multi-layered strategy for this will be, now moving on to the side where we talk of a multi-layered strategy. Now what is the meaning behind the multi-layered strategy? There will be two schools. One will be saying that it is a social, economic and developmental issue. So we will be giving the layers in this manner. You will also talk about social upliftment of them, economic, you will also talk about development. So see, your answer is always hidden inside the question. Now it is as a violent internal security threat. Violent and security are two other things. So because it is violent, it means it is also law and order. Now because it is related to security, now we will also have to think, if there is no security, there will be no development. Law and order is an issue. Security may we will also need, judiciary will also be a party, because if we can give them speedy justice and all those things, and law and order, police, security forces, hospitals, health, all of these issues will be there. Health, basically where you can talk of basic amenities. Now when we talk of law and order, it should be very strict implementation. Multi-layered strategy, what more can be there? Talking about their indigenous rights, culture, though that will be in the social sphere also, but giving it in a more structured manner, in a multi-layered manner. We will have to pass laws. So we also passed the Forest Rights Act. It was amended. The recognition of tribal rights. So that was also done. We have to bring such laws. There should be a proper rehabilitation policy. Also we need to bring in a better surrender policy. We need specialized forces. So all of this will be in the multi-layered strategy, where you will write 2 to 3 lines on each thing, and we will then conclude. So because the whole issue here is, now the whole idea of protecting the rights of the tribals, for which this movement claimed that we will protect, now that is lost. The main idea should be now that we need to develop those people, development in those areas, develop the people in terms of human development index, and bring out a peaceful solution, so that national unity and integrity can be maintained, and it can bring a lot of peace and harmony in the country and also in the lives of people who are suffering. So this is the multi-layered strategy. For in this you can give in some detailed statistics. For example, the government gave 11,000 crores to build roads in 44 districts to overcome this issue. 995 bridges were constructed. Then 7,800 crores were given in 2016-17. So all of these things specific. Then Operation Samadhan is also very famous in this. All of these things you can put up as sprinkles within these points, but on the whole this will be. And if you remember the counter operations by greyhounds in Andhra Pradesh, Salva Judum, Operation Green Hunt, Also, the surrender policy, if certain states you can say that 50,000 is given one time, 1 acre of land is given, education to children, jobs, etc. Different states are giving different things. Also, there is interstate cooperation because the Naxals use points where two states are intersecting. Now, interstate cooperations have come up, standard operating procedures have come up. All of these things will be in the detailed strategy. So, with this, we wrap up the discussion and thank you so much.